For the past couple months, I've really wanted to paint on top of wood slices. So last time I was at Walmart, I browsed the craft section and I found these really small, cheap wood slices. They're very thin and they're smaller than what I wanted initially, but my closest Walmart has been completely wiped out in their craft section, and it doesn't look like they've gotten anything in to be able to restock for the past, honestly, 2 months maybe. So I was very surprised to even see these there because their paint selection is totally wiped out. It's very empty over there right now. So like I said, I found these. It was just a couple dollars, so that definitely took away the intimidation of worrying I was going to ruin it or waste them. And my first thought was that I wanted to paint on these with acrylic paints, but then I realized I could use my Posca pens, and I'm far more comfortable using my Posca pens just because I have a lot more control with them. I've mentioned it 1,000 times, so if you watch my videos, you're probably aware that I'm not super comfortable with acrylics just because I haven't worked with the medium. So it's kind of like a, well, no wonder, because you haven't used, I don't know, I prefer to use other things. So when I realized I could use my Posca pens with these, I was really excited to try that out. I also, not super recently, but in the past 6 months, I very much so expanded my collection of Posca pens. I had a decent selection of colors, but it was mainly just a specific color palette I chose because buying a lot of different colors of Posca pens gets very expensive. I think they're around $4 per marker, so that's not horrible, but it's not cheap either. So I went on Amazon and I found group of them. I think it came with a dozen or so of the thinner markers, and I don't know if they're actual genuine Posca markers because it was really cheap considering how many you're getting. It still wasn't cheap. It was still around $50 or something, which is expensive, but it's far cheaper than buying them individually, so I was really excited about that. I don't know if they're genuine, but they work very well, so I'm not complaining even if they're fake. But as far as what I wanted to do on these pieces, I decided to do Naruto characters because I didn't know what else to do, and I thought this would just be very simple, especially considering how small these wood pieces are. I think they're 3 inches in diameter. That might be very wrong. I think they're 2 or 3 inches though. But I decided to do Naruto characters. I kept the style very simple, very just anime side profile because I just wanted to kind of play and see how this worked for me as a whole. The only complaint I had in this entire process was that on these wood slices in particular, the Posca pens would bleed in the cracks of the wood, and it was a lot more apparent when it came to the thinner Posca markers. I think they were putting out more ink as a whole, so it was seeping in the cracks better, but it really honestly didn't impact me that much. My main concern with it when I realized it was happening is that I was worried that colors would start bleeding where I had already laid colors, but thankfully, as long as there was paint on the wood slice, nothing would bleed on top of that paint. So if that makes sense, it was only bleeding where nothing else had been laid down. Because it was doing this though, I decided to prep the other 4 wood slices I had with gesso. I've actually never used gesso before, but I specifically bought it because you guys recommended gesso to me so many times, especially when it came to painting sketchbook covers. I've never used it before, I've never owned it before, but it was highly recommended to me because it's a very good base for painting on top of things. It just makes it easier for colors to lay down, but I figured for this piece, I thought it would be really beneficial to lay down gesso because I assumed that would prevent the Posca pens from bleeding in the cracks of the wood just because it would be filled up with the gesso. So I did that with the last 4. However, after doing this, and once it dried, I tried sketching on top of it, and the gesso just prevented the pencil I used to sketch from laying down well, so I didn't actually end up using the rest of those in this video. I know I will in the future. I don't see them as ruined or anything. I'll just kind of go in blindly and go in with the Posca pens with no sketch first, which is not a big deal by any means. If it doesn't bleed, that's great. So we'll just test that out in the future. I did prep those ones intending to use them, but I didn't get around to it. So you got that footage, but you're not gonna get footage of me finishing it, so sorry. My initial plan with these 2, though, was I wanted to have some of the wood showing through because I thought it was really cool to see the original base wood. I was gonna have the backgrounds be all wood and just kind of do some design over it, but after the bleeding issue, I just decided to do a color block background. I also was leaving the edges without anything on them with the intention of having the edges show, but as you can see, I'm just going over it with a gold Posca pen because I wasn't a huge fan of how uneven it was, and I figured it would honestly just look better having some color there instead of leaving it with just the rough edge, especially since like the Posca Pens kind of bled into that edge. I just wasn't super happy with that, and I really like how these turned out. These were so much fun to do. I never expected myself to have so much fun doing this, and like, I don't know, I would highly recommend this. It's really easy, especially to do with Poscas, and honestly you could do it with, I mean, if you covered it with gesso, you could do this with gouache, you could do it with acrylic, you could pretty much do like most mediums. Obviously you probably don't want to do watercolors on these because they probably wouldn't turn out the greatest, but this was really fun just playing with especially the cheap wood ones, and I was really happy with the outcome of these. I didn't know how many I was going to do from the beginning, but after that I decided I wanted to do more. So here you can see I tried sketching something out on these wood slices and it just wasn't happening. So I decided to grab some of these other ones I had lying around. I bought these big ones from Michael's like 2 months ago, intending to paint on them, and just it never ended up happening, and they've been sitting on my desk, but I decided this was the perfect time because I was very confident in my ability, and if I messed up anything, Posca Pens are very opaque, so I can just cover it up. So I really wanted to do a painting of Madoka and Homura from Puelli Magi Madoka Magica. I love Madoka Magica so much. It's one of my favorite animes and it is beautiful, and Homura is best girl, and I love everyone in that show, but I just wanted to do a Madoka one because I thought that would be really fun, and since these wood slices were so much bigger, I was able to very easily fit 2 characters, which was cool. I also noticed like pretty much right from the beginning that these wood slices, I didn't have the same bleeding issue, so I assume the other ones were doing it because they're cheaper and just like not as smooth of a surface, I guess. I don't know much about wood, so I can't vouch for that necessarily, but that's kind of the impression I'm getting from it. This was a lot more expensive. I think these ones were like $3 or $4 each at Michael's, and I can definitely see why. They're obviously way thicker. They have the bark on the sides, which is what appeals to me a lot because they look more natural, and it was so much fun doing this one. I really want to go out sometime soon and buy more wood pieces like this one where they're thicker and they're larger. I might even see if I can get some that are like way bigger, because I believe when I went to Michael's looking for these ones initially, they had some like plaques is what they considered them. I think they were closer to like 10 inches in diameter, and I think it would be really fun to do a much larger piece on that just because like the look of these, they look so cool and they're so much fun, and I love how you can still see the texture of the wood, and especially if you don't cover the entire thing in like ink or acrylic, whatever you're using, you can still see the original texture and just the look of it. And I love the bark on this one on the sides, it's really cool. I still obviously have the 2 others that I purchased from Michael's, so I'm really excited to work on those ones as well. I don't know what I'm going to do with them yet. I haven't actually done any more of these wood pieces, but I still have 2 big ones from Michael's and 4 of the really small ones from Walmart, so I'm really excited to see what I'm going to do with those ones. I did kind of struggle with this piece in terms of colors because I didn't have the exact colors for everything. I could have technically done Homura's hair black because it's technically like a really dark gray, but I felt like that would be really harsh for this piece because I wanted it to still look soft. So I decided to take my own judgment and make her hair a dark purple, and then just kind of play with the rest of her outfit to modify anything that was black to a dark purple. And that kind of got weird in certain parts where those 2 colors overlapped, but I feel like I did a really good job of making this one work, and I'm really happy with this one again, how it turned out. It's a style that is not necessarily how I normally draw, but just for the sake of how small these pieces were and the intimidation factor of drawing on something that I'm not used to drawing on, I decided to go with that for all of my pieces. But like I said, I'm really happy with the final outcome of all of these. It was so much fun to do. Towards the end, I started debating whether or not I should seal these with anything, and then I started thinking about sealing them with resin, and I've wanted to kind of like play around with mixing glitter into resin and sealing stuff that way, but resin as a whole is a very scary concept to me. Resin is just very scary. If you don't know what resin is, you basically mix 2 parts together, 1 piece resin, 1 piece hardener, and you let that cure for however long it takes, and it gets really hard and glossy, and it's just very pretty. Resin finishes are gorgeous. Resin is just really scary in particular because it has to be mixed really well. It has to be like near exact equal amounts of part A and part B when you're mixing, otherwise it has a chance of not curing properly where it'll be sticky or just like, I don't know. I've heard lots of horror stories of people using resin and it not turning out well, and I do have resin, but I've only used it twice, and both times it did turn out well. It's just very scary, and like it comes with fumes, so I have to lock out a room in the house and make sure the cats don't go in there, open a window, keep everything safe, especially for the cats. But in the end, I did decide I wanted to seal these with resin, which I was kind of scared I was going to ruin them, even though these were very simple pieces, and I'm sure I could technically recreate them. I was still really happy with how they looked, and I did not want to screw them up, so sealing them with resin was really scary, but we did it. This is the brand of resin I have. It's called Art Resin. I got it off of Amazon like a year or two ago. I've had this resin for a very long time. Obviously, since I still have it, and that's a very small amount of resin, I don't use it often. Like I said, I've used it twice. So I decided to do this, not necessarily impulsively, but I started thinking about covering them in resin, and I was like, I want to do it so bad. So I didn't have any glitter to mix in, so I didn't mix in any glitter. Otherwise, I probably would have, because I've seen Absolute Alma on Instagram do that with her wood pieces, and it is absolutely gorgeous, but I didn't have resin. I didn't feel like running to Michael's or Walmart or anywhere. I didn't want to leave the house. So I just decided to do just the regular resin. And as you can see, I'm just taking a lighter and popping the air bubbles. I don't have like a little kitchen blowtorch. I want to get one in the future, especially if I start doing resin pieces more often. It just makes it a lot easier than using a lighter, because it's very time consuming to use a lighter. And I feel like I'm gonna get resin all over my lighter on accident because I have to get really close to it. But everything turned out well. After like 24 hours, I peeked at them and they turned out so pretty. Sadly, on the Sasuke and the Homura and Madoka piece, the resin didn't cover every single little bit of it. There's a couple of pieces where it's like the wood peeking through. I'll probably fix that in the future and just do another passive resin on top. And then with the Homura and the Madoka piece, the resin really accentuated the little bits here and there where I didn't actually cover the surface in Posca. As you can see on Homura's face, there's a couple of dots, and that's just because I accidentally messed up and I didn't cover that with Posca, but it's not a big deal. Like I said, I'm really happy with how these turned out. This was so much fun to do, and if you guys would like to see me doing this again in the future, let me know, because I'll definitely be doing it. It was so much fun, and I'm really excited to see what other kind of things I can do, especially when it comes to painting on wood. I really want to play around with that more in the future, and just like, I don't know, I want to make a lot of things. This is something I had a lot of fun doing, so I'm really looking forward to doing it again. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.